So we're on day 3 of our Snapdragon PC testing, and today we're going to be looking at productivity. Now, just in case you missed it, we've already unboxed the Surface Pro 11, the Surface Laptop 7, and also the Galaxy Book 4 Edge. Plus, we've also tested games on these devices, so I'm going to link those down below just in case you've missed any. Now, Gary and I have spent hours actually using these devices for productivity use, trying to complete all of our daily tasks with these Snapdragon PCs. Now, like the games testing, we've had a few mixed results. So let's start off with general use. These devices have been absolutely amazing for general Windows use, web browsing, office use, Teams, and media consumption. So if you're a light user or an office user, then chances are these machines will be a great fit for you. But I do want to mention if you're a big Google Drive user, although you can use the web interface fine, there's currently no working desktop apps. And I also have had some users saying that they can't get VPNs working. Fortunately, we don't have any VPNs here to test. Battery life and performance on battery has been excellent, but it's too early for me to provide definitive numbers yet, so I will save that for the full reviews of each of these devices. But needless to say, you can easily get a good day's casual uses from these laptops. Next, we wanted to try setting it up on our desks and start using monitors and peripherals. Now, I use a Dell Ultrafine 4K 27-inch monitor, which includes 90 watt power delivery and a full hub with USB-A's, USB-C's, and even an Ethernet port. Plugging in the Surface Pro 11 and the Surface Laptop 7, we had no issues with connectivity. I instantly switched to my usual extended displays, and I put my usual Surface Pro 11 screen directly under my monitor so I can work very comfortably for me with the dual screens. There were no bugs and there were no glitches here. It charges through the power delivery, and performance of these machines were exactly as you'd expect. Now, the USB devices I plugged into the monitor also worked as expected, and this helped create my usual one cable desk setup that I really like working with. I also tested a few Bluetooth peripherals, some mice and some headsets, and they all work perfectly on both of these devices, so these really are great for your day-to-day office use. So, with our setup in place, we started testing applications such as photo editing, video editing, 3D design, and development tools with a scattering of the Copilot. Starting with the ARM-friendly version of Photoshop, we tried some light sketching to test the pen and the tablet. The new pen is still great, with none of the slow jitter issues that we had from pens of old. We also had a play with Adobe's generative fill, not that it makes any use of the local machine's NPU resources, but just to create some abominations. The whole of our time in Photoshop, the machines never got hot and we didn't hear any fan noise, so overall Photoshop was a really pleasant experience. And just in case, like me, you're an Adobe hater, there is an ARM version of GIMP. Moving over to video editing, and sad news, there is no Premiere Pro support for ARM as of the time of writing, though Adobe are apparently working on it. Luckily, we had an older version of Premiere Pro local files, so we installed that on our Surface laptop for testing. And sadly, through emulation, the x86 version was incredibly poorly performing. Now, Dave2D reckons that he had some good luck with this software. That wasn't our experience. It was even chuggy, sort of getting some local files into the timeline, and it didn't even try transitions or titles, because just cutting and moving things around the timeline was painful. But fortunately, DaVinci Resolve 19 does have an ARM edition, and the verdict? Well, I have to say, general usage was frustratingly slow, with a lot of lag when making edits even in 1080p. Exporting was also very poor, taking 30 minutes to render a 10-minute 4K video in H.265. Also, whilst exporting and with heavy use, in Resolve the fans were spinning up to 42 decibels, very similar to when we were doing the gaming. Now, we also tested the Magic Mask, as this apparently does make use of the ARM chip's NPU. But whatever these benefits the NPUs are providing, it's very hard to tell. Now, overall, we don't predict anyone's going to be replacing the higher spec PCs with graphics cards for these devices for video editing. Now, another tool that we do use a lot when we're video editing is the Audacity software. We use this for all of our audio recording and editing before it goes into the actual videos. Now, unfortunately, again, there is no dedicated ARM version of Audacity, but the x86 version worked absolutely flawlessly through emulation, so no problems at all there if you need something like Audacity for your workflow. Now, we did also have a play around with Copilot, since this Surface is one of the new breeds of Copilot Plus machines, and AI is all the rage. And it's useful getting it to generate code snippets or having it produce images from prompts. There's some great and there's some really bizarre. And whilst mentioning code, VS Code and also Visual Studio do have an ARM version. VS Code was working perfectly, and we had no problems adding in our plugins. We also tested Xamp to create a local AMP stack. Now this software is a bit more obscure, so there was no ARM version available. Fortunately, the emulation of this software worked perfectly, and I was able to create my local websites with database and my FTP software all running as normal. And the last piece of software we tested in today's video is Blender. Now, on the website, the latest version 4.1 was only available in x86 and therefore was running in emulation. Now, when we emulated this software, it was working pretty well. I was able to actually create models without any issues, and it was only when I then switched it over to the render option that these really did slow down. But then if I imagine that a Surface Pro 9 and before were probably pretty much as slow rendering some of these images. When I clicked the materials, it did load as expected. Now, searching around the web, I did find that on the daily builds of Blender 3D, there is a beta version that is being made currently for ARM. Now, in testing that, I was able to get it up and running, and it was able to do some of the modeling in the software, but there were a lot of bugs, and I wasn't able to get the actual material working correctly. Now, when looking at the task manager as well, it did seem to be purely using CPU, so I don't think this is working as it should be at the moment. But great news that we can use it perfectly well for up to probably medium projects via the emulation, and knowing the Blender support community, that ARM version will be here very soon. So overall, I'm actually really quite pleased. This is obviously day 3 now with these Snapdragon devices, and most things are pretty much in a workable state for productivity. Now, there are going to be a few niggles. I know a couple of the people on the channel have mentioned they've not been able to get their VPNs working, which could potentially ruin it for any kind of enterprise environment. Now, obviously in our little office here, we don't have VPNs, so we don't need to worry about that. So basically normal users will probably be fine, but maybe enterprise is completely out at the moment. And certain pieces of software just will not run, such as I say, Google Drive and Premiere Pro at the moment. But this is early days, and I think Microsoft are going to push to try and make this ARM work better, especially better than the last time that ARM machines were released. Now, I was quite disappointed when I tested the gaming, but I'm a lot more comfortable having used these now for productivity. And if you are a light user and you're not planning on using these for video editing, I think you'll do very well. Now, this is a shame with regards to the video editing, because if you do buy an Apple machine with Apple Silicon, you can buy any MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, and they will video edit because of the encoders on those chips. Now, these Snapdragon chips do have encoders, so I'm not sure if the problems with video editing is down to just the early builds of DaVinci Resolve, or whether these chips just really aren't up to video editing at all. And that is a real shame, because I would love to have been able to do some video editing on a tiny little device like this, like you can on a Mac. Well, there we go. That's our experience so far with the productivity apps on the Snapdragon devices. As always, if you've got any questions, pop it down below and I will get back to you. And any comments, I'd love to hear from you. And as always, thanks for watching.